Today on Notsam Wrestling, as the Royal Rumble rapidly approaches, we look at the myriad of possibilities that the WWE has set up for us. Okada coming to the United States, maybe? Where is he going? And what did Samoa Joe and Hook actually do for themselves and for AEW? This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling, and we come to you with the Royal Rumble rapidly approaching. Of course, I'll be in Tampa. I'll be doing stuff with the Busted Open radio show, hosting for them on Friday and Saturday morning, hosting Notsam Wrestling live Friday at 5 p.m. That's happening at SideSplitters in Tampa. By the way, guests have already been announced for that show. I'm talking about R-Truth is going to be at that show. I'm talking about Samantha Irvin is going to be at that show. I'm talking about DJ Who Kid is going to be at that show. And another guest, literally today, right before I jumped in front of this mic, I just confirmed a fourth guest, which I don't know if I'm going to announce in advance or not. You'll never guess who is going to be at that show. I will say this. Somebody who has had a stellar career across multiple eras and an attitude era standout. I'll just say that. Maybe you will guess. I don't know. But it's going to be an extremely fun weekend. Partly because of everything that I get to do, but let's be honest, mostly because of what we all get to do. And that's enjoy the Royal Rumble. And I feel like, to me, the Royal Rumble is the funnest match of the year because it is a snapshot of everything that's going on in WWE at that given moment. If you go back and watch previous year's Royal Rumbles, you can kind of piece together who the stars were, what their stories were, and what they were really doing in the WWE. You can also see what's fun about the Royal Rumble is you can look at where WWE was like intending to go, right? You can see where they're going, but where they were also intending to go. I mean, look no further than the Royal Rumble before WrestleMania 30, and that they were intending to go to WrestleMania with Batista as a babyface to challenge Randy Orton. At the same time, you could go to the 93 Royal Rumble and see that they were looking, and successfully made a huge star out of Yokozuna. There's just so much going on, and I think this year is maybe more than ever in terms of just sheer storytelling. This is what I noticed as I was watching, especially Raw leading up to it. There's been a lot more emphasis put on the Royal Rumble match on the Raw show, but I think that's because most of the top male stars on SmackDown are in title matches, right? When you look at the Royal Rumble Premium Live event as a whole, so far, the only matches that have been announced are the Women's Royal Rumble, the Men's Royal Rumble, and then also Roman Reigns, LA Knight, Randy Orton, and AJ Styles in the Universal Championship match, and Kevin Owens and Logan Paul in the United States Championship match. But that's 6 top male stars from SmackDown that presumably won't be in the Royal Rumble match. All that said, it's really interesting how many seeds are already being planted for post-Royal Rumble, but they're seeds that can't all grow fruit. They're stories that all of the stories that are being planted right now cannot be told by WrestleMania. One of them will. For instance, you've got Cody, right? On one end, he's saying that he wants to go to WrestleMania to challenge Roman Reigns. On the other side of things, is he really done with Shinsuke Nakamura? On a third side of things, Drew McIntyre's got a problem with him. On a fourth side of things, CM Punk is over here saying, let's confront each other on Monday Night Raw. What's really interesting about Cody Rhodes specifically, and the idea that Cody Rhodes needs to finish the story. I mean, people are tired of me saying finish the story on this podcast. I can't imagine how they feel watching WWE TV, but what I love is that the story of Cody coming in at WrestleMania 38 and going to WrestleMania 39 was that the whole point was that Cody's finishing the story. It was the biggest headline of the year, arguably. The year that Cody Rhodes left AEW and returned to WWE at WrestleMania 38 and had his match with Seth Rollins and had this year-long build that included the three matches with Seth Rollins, included getting his pec torn, which nobody could have predicted, including coming back and winning the Royal Rumble. And the whole time attempting to, as he put it, finish the story. But what's happened, right? What's happened since he hasn't finished the story? What's happened in the year from WrestleMania 39 to now? And what's great is the whole roster has picked up on Cody's mission and has decided they all have stories. It's like Cody has as much time as he needs to quote unquote finish the story. But what happens is the longer it takes for him to finish the story, the more it becomes members of the roster going, well, no, I mean, who cares about your story? You tried, you failed. It's time for me to finish my story. Every single person going into this Royal Rumble match is trying to finish the story now. And on one end, you've got Cody. That's a story you could finish. But whose story are you actually finishing? Who would have predicted a month ago that you'd have people talking about Jinder Mahal finishing the story? You've had people, R-Truth needs to finish the story all of a sudden. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And some of it is done facetiously, right? Like the R-Truth stuff is more like, let's just ride this wave of momentum. But the idea of R-Truth winning the Royal Rumble, while absurd, has also never been more possible than it is right now. But realistically, I mean, Drew McIntyre shows up on Raw on Monday. And he looks at Cody in the face and he's all heartfelt and he says, you will finish the story, Cody. You will finish your story. And Cody's starting to well up. But Drew says, not before I finish mine, though. Because Drew's got a story. Right? You could make a whole ass Peacock documentary about Drew's story. About the fact that Drew did not pan out in WWE. Had to leave and transform himself into an entirely new athlete. Had to return to WWE and start from literally the bottom. Go back to developmental. Go to NXT. Become a star in NXT. Come to the main roster, but not get skyrocketed on the main roster. When he got to the main roster, he was Dolph Ziggler's bodyguard. And then he was the villain that good guys would beat on their way to getting the title match. He was the villain that Roman Reigns would beat when Roman Reigns was returning. The one tier away from the top villain that the guy would defeat before they actually became the guy. And then he finally is able to build enough momentum that the trigger is pulled. He has one of the greatest Royal Rumble moments ever when he eliminates Brock Lesnar in 2020. That's still, I don't think that Royal Rumble match has been beaten in terms of just great Royal Rumble matches since it happened. Is it the greatest Royal Rumble match of all time? That's a different conversation. But is it the greatest Royal Rumble match of this decade? I would argue 100% yes. And one of the main reasons for that is the way he eliminates Brock Lesnar and the way Brock Lesnar just lays there after the Claymore kick. And yes, Drew McIntyre is able to ride that wave of momentum all the way to WrestleMania, where he does defeat Brock Lesnar. And then in a weird series of events, also happens to beat the Big Show in the same night just because. But he doesn't do it in front of anybody. He does it in the Performance Center with nobody except Michael Cole and Corey Graves sitting at ringside and that big fan on the ceiling still. They hadn't even uninstalled the fan when he won the title. And then WWE is finally, after a year, able to put a couple of people into a stadium. Is able to fill the stadium, a third. I think less than a half, maybe a half full stadium, probably a third. And what happens? Not only is Drew McIntyre not the champion by then, but he attempts to regain the title and he loses early in the show. And this wave of momentum that was stopped by the pandemic. And Drew had to ride that wave of momentum and become the flag bearer when nobody else could be. For pandemic wrestling, when there was nobody in the audience. And then that just slips away. And right under his nose, Roman Reigns comes and starts this story that is the thing that leads us out of the pandemic. And then a new title is announced, but Rollins is the guy now. And that story that started in 2020 is one that Drew never got to finish. What about Jinder's story? What about the fact that Jinder has been hindered from the very beginning? That Jinder is a former WWE champion, not taken terribly seriously, but this story starts to build when he comes out on Raw, when a former champion is announced, and the whole crowd boos him. The whole crowd is disappointed. How dare you be disappointed? I am a former WWE champion. What do I have to do to earn y'all's respect, is what Jinder Mahal is wondering to himself, paraphrased, of course. And then the promoter from a rival organization goes on his Twitter account and says it's absurd that match is even happening. And that Jinder Mahal, all he does is lose matches. He doesn't deserve a world title match. And all that happens is momentum builds and momentum builds and momentum builds. And he has this world title match with Seth Rollins. And there is this feeling in the main event of Monday Night Raw that people could actually see this and want to see it. I would argue that had Jinder won that match, he would have been cheered by the audience. I can't believe we saw it. He deserves it. After everything he's done, that guy deserves it. Because he had a title reign that, while it started out of nowhere, also ended fairly abruptly and was never treated like a former champion after that title run. And by the way, Jinder's got a very similar story to Drew, who didn't pan out, who had to leave, who had to transform himself, who had to put the work in and come back and become Jinder Mahal, and he's never had that moment. And people are ready for it. What about CM Punk? What about CM Punk? What about that story? What about the story that CM Punk walks out on WWE as one of the most popular performers that company has? And he goes on this podcast that sets the industry on fire when it comes out, and that fire has not gone out since. Fire still burns, as a matter of fact. And what does he say on that podcast? They told me I was going to wrestle Triple H at WrestleMania. I didn't want to wrestle Triple H at WrestleMania. It was time for me to be in the main event. He says at WrestleMania 29, he got the Undertaker match. The Undertaker match that it was at a place where it had a higher stock than ever. The Undertaker match was always a big deal. Well, not always a big deal at WrestleMania, but, you know, after 10 years or so of The Undertaker winning, it became a bigger and bigger deal each time we got to WrestleMania. And it really, really started to kick in right around WrestleMania 24 when The Undertaker beats Edge. You could argue WrestleMania 23 when The Undertaker beat Randy Orton, it was there. But WrestleMania 25, 26, 27, 28, Shawn, Hunter. And what happens after that series of 4 of the most classic WrestleMania matches of all time? The Undertaker takes all that stock and he goes into New York, and CM Punk's the guy that gets that match. And what does CM Punk say? Look, no disrespect to The Undertaker. I fully understand the spot that I'm in. But I want the main event of WrestleMania. This is 11 years ago. This is WrestleMania 29, he says this. When he realizes he's not getting it at WrestleMania 30, it means so much to him that among everything else that's happened to him, causes him to walk out on the company and be gone for a full decade. Carry a grudge with him for the way that he was treated, depending on how you tell the story, the kernel of which can be boiled down to the fact that he wants to main event WrestleMania. The unthinkable happens at Survivor Series 2023. CM Punk returns to the ring. Why does CM Punk return to the ring? He never got to main event WrestleMania. And what's the first thing that he says when he's got a WWE microphone? Well, he says he's back home. But he says he's here to finish his story, which means main eventing WrestleMania. Now CM Punk's got a story? So now we got Cody's story, but we got Drew's story, we got Jinder's story, we got Punk's story. You going to tell me Jey Uso doesn't have a story? You're going to tell me Jey Uso, who's gone through everything that he's gone through with the Bloodline, that came to Monday Night Raw after leaving the Bloodline and was met with a locker room full of hostility, only to become one of the most popular stars on that show by shouting the word yeet? You can tell me he doesn't have a story that he'd like to finish by winning the Royal Rumble and going to WrestleMania to challenge the head of the table, Roman Reigns? And speaking of the head of the table, Roman Reigns, over 3 years ago at this point, 3.5 years ago, getting to the point where we're close to 4, the story of the Bloodline begins. Roman Reigns being the head of the table. And from the moment that Roman Reigns cited the Anoa'i family, from the moment that the lineage of Roman Reigns came into the conversation, whether you're talking about the Usos as his cousins in Solo, whether you're talking about the greats that came before him from Afa and Sika, Umaga, Yokozuna, when Roman declared himself the head of the table, the immediate question was, what about The Rock? Why isn't The Rock the head of the table? And how does The Rock feel about Roman Reigns proclaiming himself the head of the table? And we didn't think we were going to get The Rock at WrestleMania 37, coming right off the pandemic. But there were rumors about The Rock at WrestleMania 38, coming in, the year that Roman ended up beating Brock Lesnar. There were rumors that The Rock could make his return. The Rock versus Roman Reigns was that match that people talked about. A year later, more rumors of The Rock, even as Cody Rhodes was talking about finishing his story. More rumors of The Rock. Doesn't happen. A year after that, The Rock shows up on Monday Night Raw, asks the audience if they think he should sit at the head of the table. This is months after he goes on Pat McAfee's show and talks about the fact that it was supposed to happen at 39. It didn't happen at 39, but that's not to say it won't happen. And when The Rock says, should I sit at the head of the table, there's a collective cheer from everybody watching. Because while all these other stories are important as well, what about that story? What about The Rock story? What about the fact that the entire story of the Bloodline has involved The Rock, whether he's here or not, from the beginning? The fact is, The Rock has to finish the story, and Rock's story may be the story of the Bloodline. Because ultimately, whose story are we telling? Is Cody's story an overlap of the bigger story, which is Roman's story, which is The Rock's story? What story are we telling? We got Cody with a problem with Punk. Punk with a problem with Cody. Cody with a problem with Drew. Drew with a problem with Cody. Drew with a problem with Punk. Jay with a problem with Drew. Drew with a problem with Jay. We don't know whose story we're finishing. Everyone going into this Royal Rumble has a story. Gunther's got a story. Gunther's sitting there going, you go and look at 2023. From the Royal Rumble to today. From Rumble to Rumble. Who has had a year like Gunther? When you look at Gunther going from the number 1 spot to being the final person eliminated at the Royal Rumble. When you look at the triple threat that Gunther had at WrestleMania. When you go through the year, who's had a year like Gunther? Nobody. Gunther wants to go out there and be the top person in the industry. How does that story get resolved? Well, he could go to WrestleMania and beat the world champion. How does he do that? He wins the Royal Rumble. Another story. So whose story are we telling? We don't know. All these stories are around. And it's not just the men. Look over at the women's side of things. Look at the fact that we've got Becky Lynch and Rhea Ripley staring each other down on Monday Night Raw. Well, does this mean that Becky's going to win the Royal Rumble? and go to WrestleMania against Rhea Ripley? Possibly, but Becky's still got unresolved issues with Nia Jax. Well, we have one pay-per-view. Maybe we could get Nia Jax versus Becky at Elimination Chamber, and then Becky goes to WrestleMania to face Rhea Ripley. Yeah, that's true, but what about everybody else that's in that match? What about everybody else? What about the fact that Nia Jax and Rhea Ripley don't get along? Nia Jax and Becky could get settled at Elimination Chamber, but what about the fact that Nia Jax beat Becky once and has issues with Rhea Ripley? When does that get settled? All of these plates are being juggled right in front of our eyes. Not to mention the fact that as of this recording, we don't even know where Seth Rollins stands. I mean, look, I fully intend on dropping an emergency podcast probably about 24 hours, if not 36 hours from the time this show comes out. Because there are rumors circulating that Seth Rollins is injured coming off of his match with Jinder Mahal, which puts the world title in an odd spot. Is Seth so injured that he knows he won't make it to WrestleMania? And if he's not going to make it to WrestleMania, does that mean the world title is going to get decided in the Royal Rumble? Does that mean the world title is going to get decided in the Elimination Chamber? Does that mean that the lineup for WrestleMania is getting shaken up because we're not going to get Seth versus CM Punk anymore? Or are his injuries less severe than we think? Are they the type of injuries that'll keep him out for 2 months? But by the time we get to WrestleMania, he'll be okay, which means that he can keep the title until then? Will he be back for WrestleMania, but he has to give up the title because he's going to be gone for so long, and then he's got to try to win back the title at WrestleMania? Nobody knows. We're going to hit on that topic probably later this week. But with all of these questions, I mean, we've got all these questions and 6 people announced for the Royal Rumble. 8, I think, announced for the Women's Royal Rumble, something low like that. And I hope it stays that way. Because all the mystery spots in the Rumble add even more intrigue, add even more drama. Who's to say that the person whose story we're finishing in either the men's or the women's Royal Rumble, or at least writing the next chapter of, is even somebody that's on the roster right now? It could be somebody completely different. I mean, when you're looking at potential surprise entrants in the Royal Rumble this year, are we looking at Andrade? We know Andrade is not a part of AEW anymore. We know Triple H has to be a fan of Andrade because of the way he was booked in NXT, I would imagine, I would think. His wife works for the company. That doesn't hurt, but he's already got his connections, is what I'm saying. The Royal Rumble seems like a perfect time for Andrade to come back. Maybe it's not, I don't know, but maybe it is. And if he does, where does he rank? What about you look at the women? How about the fact that Trinity lost the TNA Knockouts Championship and seems to have wrapped up with TNA? All signs would point to the fact that Trinity, formerly known as Naomi, is on her way back to the WWE. And if Naomi is coming back, Naomi walked out of the WWE as a champion. If she shows up in the Royal Rumble, what's her mission statement? Why is she here, and where is she expected to be ranked? And how about this one? How about somebody that the WWE invested quite a bit of time in convincing the WWE audience was a massive star and a giant signing, and then in the last month or so has gone completely excommunicado on? I'm talking about Jade Cargill. Enough foundation has been laid where whenever we see Jade Cargill, whether we have been following her career in AEW or not, we've been conditioned to believe that this woman is a massive star, that this woman is a game changer. That's how she's been presented. She's been presented on Raw, on SmackDown, on NXT, on premium live events. She's had face-to-face interactions with the top people on the roster. The idea is that when Jade Cargill finally does arrive, she is at the top of the card. because she's that type of performer. That's what I've been conditioned to believe based on the way the television has played itself out. Now, the fact that we haven't heard anything about Jade Cargill, we were hearing from her every single week. There was a period of time where she'd be on like every show, just kind of there. Showing up with a different outfit inside of a car every week, showing up on a big screen on NXT. She was up in the bird's nest in NXT one week. And then, nothing. To the point where people were like, oh, some of the experts, some of the wrestling news reporter experts were going, well, they've lost confidence, which is absurd. The idea that she's disappeared from the conversation because she's lost confidence, because WWE's lost confidence in her, is not only is there no direct evidence of that, but it's even misguided to assume that that would be the case, when in reality, the reason that the conversation about her has started to dry up is probably intentional, because that way, when she does show up on TV, it's a bigger deal. It's a surprise. Oh, I wasn't even thinking about her. Oh, if you're talking about her every week and then she shows up, it's like, oh, yeah, she's been top of mind because you've been talking about her every week. But if you lay the foundation that she's a giant star and then you stop talking about her, when she does show up, it's a surprise. And also, oh, that's right. All that foundation that was laid comes to the front of my cerebellum, and this is what you get. The crowd goes wild. If Jade Cargill shows up in the Royal Rumble, there's a great chance that she's going to win that match. And if she does, I've got to believe that the fantasy match that everybody wants to see played out at WrestleMania is Rhea Ripley versus Jade Cargill. I said last week, my pick is still, talking about stories, Bayley to finally win the Royal Rumble. She's put in, again, when the 4 horsewomen came to WWE from NXT, Bayley was the one left behind. It was Charlotte, Sasha, Becky coming to the main roster, going to WrestleMania, and it was Bayley going, we'll get to you when we get to you. Bayley's the one now who has not won the Royal Rumble. This is the year for me to have Bayley win the Royal Rumble, send her back into Babyfaceville, have her be a good guy again, and have her conquer the monster that she created, Damage Control, at WrestleMania. Or not conquer it, just attempt to conquer it. But for me, that's the direction to go. Many different directions to go in. I think when you talk about potential surprises in the Royal Rumble and just potential debuts coming up, and it may not be for the Royal Rumble. I don't know contractually if the Royal Rumble is a possibility or not. But I think the name that is on everybody's mind, at least at the moment right now, is Okada. Okada is the tippity top guy in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and the announcement was made that Okada is leaving New Japan. So the question then goes, and this is, I believe, fairly unprecedented. It's very rare that the top guy leaves New Japan when still a top guy. I don't know if it ever happens. Nakamura leaving New Japan was a huge, huge, huge deal. And he was certainly one of the most buzzed about guys. He was one of the most popular guys. I don't know that he was the tippy top guy when he left. He was the top guy, but not like Cody Rhodes was technically not the tippy top guy in AEW when he left. He wasn't the champion. I think Shinsuke was in a similar position in New Japan, and that's to say that Okada leaving New Japan, as big of a deal as it was when Shinsuke left New Japan, Okada leaving New Japan is an even bigger deal. The question is, where is he going? If you're leaving New Japan, the only places to go are WWE and AEW. You're not leaving, because New Japan would have you back. You're not leaving New Japan to work the indies. New Japan has not decided to release their biggest star. Their biggest star has decided to move on to other things. So does he go to AEW or WWE? I mean, if I were a betting man, and if I had a betting sponsorship, I would claim to be a betting man. But this week I do not. However, if I did, I would put my money on Okada going to AEW. I would bet that's where he'll end up. It's the decision that Jay White made. It's the decision that Will Ospreay made. And I say that because I feel like there is not as big of a leap going from New Japan to AEW as there is going from New Japan to WWE. And I say that because, number one, there is a working partnership that exists between New Japan and AEW. You know, whether it's the Forbidden Door, whether it's athletes coming in, like that there seems to be at least some kind of working relationship between those two organizations. But also the presentation is more similar between AEW and New Japan than between WWE and New Japan. It's not exactly the same, but it's certainly more similar. WWE is its own beast. WWE does things the WWE way. I was talking about this last week, and to put it, maybe to simplify it even too much, I have always felt like in WWE, the stories are the nucleus of what's going on, and the matches revolve around those stories. I think in both AEW and New Japan, the matches are the nucleus, and the stories revolve around the matches. And that's a different way of performing. That's a different way of presenting the product. That's a different philosophy in getting fans into buildings and getting fans to tune into shows. And I would imagine, I couldn't speak on this factually because I've never had to do it, but I would imagine that there may be a learning curve in doing what you do differently. That said, I don't know what Okada wants to do. I don't know if Okada wants to continue to do something similar to what he's been doing and just continue to do it on the highest level possible, to go to AEW and to go, hey, now we can do Samoa Joe versus Okada. Now we can do even MJF versus Okada. We can go to Wembley Stadium and do Bryan Danielson versus Okada. You know, there's a million things you could do with him. And Wembley Stadium has changed everything, right? Because people have come up with quotes saying, you know, well, Okada's always wanted to perform at WrestleMania. That's been a goal of his. Sure. But he probably wouldn't mind doing Wembley. You know what I mean? Like, WrestleMania is always going to be WrestleMania, and there's always only one WrestleMania. But 80,000 people in Wembley Stadium is pretty good, too. If you don't want to do everything that's around that. If you want to do everything that's around WrestleMania, then WrestleMania is the only place to do WrestleMania. But if you want to do what you do now on a WrestleMania scale, then that feels a little bit more like Wembley Stadium. What do I want? Well, I mean, I'm a WWE guy. I'm a WWE loyalist historically. I would love to see Okada show up in WWE. I would love for WWE to show, because I feel like with Cody, they're starting to with Jade. That's the plan with Jade Cargill. Not as much with Punk, but maybe a little bit with Punk. The idea of, look what we can do when we have talent like this. And I think that if WWE is able to get their hands on Okada, then WWE can really show the world, look what we can do. I know you're a top star wherever you are in the world, but look what it means to be a top star here. And Okada would be the grandest experiment of all when it comes to portraying people like that. You know, I think that there is some truth to the idea that you go, well, a lot of WWE fans have probably not seen Okada wrestle. And that's probably true. But there's no organization like the WWE that can convince somebody that an athlete is a star before they show up. I think that the same way WWE fans lost their minds for the fact that Nakamura was even coming, when they realized Nakamura was on his way, things were at a fever pitch. There was an excitement from groups of people that had never seen this guy wrestle, the likes of which you don't see very often. And I think that that's something that they could do on an even larger scale with Okada. And it would also certainly change things going into WrestleMania, you know? I mean, if you go, well, we need to see Cody finish the story. how can Cody go into WrestleMania without the Roman Reigns match? How could his character survive that well if his character was having a match against Okada at WrestleMania? Then you could put off finishing the story. If it's like, well, we're not going to see Cody versus Roman, but we're going to see Cody versus Okada, and maybe it's Okada's first match in WWE, yeah, I think that would probably be worth a lot of eyeballs. That would probably be worth postponing the story for months, if not a year. But who knows? I'm very, very anxious to see where Okada goes and what he decides to do, because it's going to be a big deal. Wherever he goes, it's going to be a big deal. We had two big deal matches. What's great is that with all this Tony Khan Twitter drama that we were talking about last week, what ended up happening because of it is two awesome world title matches on television. We got Jinder versus Seth on Monday, which was excellent and actually had the crowd and those of us at home, including myself, believing a couple of times, oh my God, is this actually going to happen? Is Jinder going to do it again? Could lightning strike twice? And between Hook and Samoa Joe, it wasn't the same feeling, but that's good because it wasn't the same story. I didn't necessarily at any point think that Hook was going to beat Samoa Joe, and I don't think that the intention was to make people believe that Hook can beat Samoa Joe. I think the intention was make the world believe that even Samoa Joe doesn't have an easy time with Hook. And that's what they did. To me, I feel like this is a moment for AEW. I think what AEW needs to get really good at really fast is figuring out how to capitalize on momentum. AEW can create moments that create momentum. And they've done it before, and they did it on Wednesday. AEW put Hook on a different level on Wednesday. I've been a Hook fan from the jump, but the ball was dropped on him some time ago. It was almost like there was this, and I my personal opinion, people could argue this. I feel like Orange Cassidy has suffered from this, even though you'd say, well, they put the title on him. They put him in the main event. Yeah. But when he main evented with Mox and he lost, what happened after that? Did Orange Cassidy get bigger after that? Orange Cassidy is one of those homegrown guys that, like, some in the industry might laugh at his gimmick, but realistically, for a period of time, he was getting attention outside of the wrestling bubble. People were like, oh my God, there's this like insane like slacker gimmick going on this other wrestling show that's not WWE. It's hilarious. And people were paying attention to it. And then he caught the hearts of fans that weren't fans of his for no particular reason other than it just hadn't connected yet. And he got him. He was beloved. And we didn't seal the deal. Hook, same thing. Danhausen, same thing. There's this group of homegrown, quote-unquote, AEW guys, because like the Orange Cassidy was doing his character before he got to AEW. Danhausen was doing his character before he got to AEW. MJF was doing his character before he got to AEW. But realistically, seeing them on a national or international scale, they weren't seen before AEW. What's great about these characters, aside from MJF, and I'm talking about Hook, I'm talking about Danhausen, I'm talking about Orange Cassidy, is these are characters that traditionally wouldn't be able to be top guys in WWE. WWE traditionally probably wouldn't go all the way with characters like this. But I feel like that makes them even more appealing in AEW. It makes it so that one of the things that separates AEW is that they are a place that when somebody like Orange Cassidy or Danhausen or Hook catches fire, that they can become a top-tier guy. I mean, Wardlow caught fire, and they dropped the ball on Wardlow. I feel like Hobbs has had the ball dropped on him multiple times. And I think that that's something that has to stop in AEW, and we'll see if it does, because they've put Hook in this amazing position. Watching that match, and listening to the support grow and grow and grow for Hook in that match with Samoa Joe, and as giving as Samoa Joe was to Hook, was remarkable. It was like, it's so great when you go out there and there's clearly a plan, and the plan just works. And that, to me, is what happened between Hook and Samoa Joe. The plan just worked. Are there little things I would have done differently? Yeah. I wish we had a little less Taz, a little more Dad on commentary. There were a couple of instances where Taz brought up the fact that well, I know I'm his father. A little more concern over the fact, like, when he took that bump on that table and that table didn't budge. Like, I wish Taz had stepped out of commentator character. I don't need him to get in the ring. I don't need Taz to come out. I don't need the human suplex machine to come out. But the human being. I would have liked to have heard a little bit more from that human being. Little things, you know. When Hook eventually did get choked out by Samoa Joe, instead of the wrestling, you know, one arm, okay, ring the bell. That's like the old school sleeper hold way of knowing that somebody was asleep. I would have preferred, now that we've got this MMA education, that we've all seen people get choked out for real, I would have preferred the quicker sort of, okay, we know he's out, ring the bell, ding, ding, ding. Because for a guy to be unconscious for 3 referee drops of the arm is a very damaging thing to do. Like, the minute he passes out, the referee rings the bell. I think that would have, that probably would have added to it even more for me. But that's all to say, this was, to me, extremely successful. I love the Hook character. You know, when Hook first started, when he hadn't had a match, he got super popular. And part of that popularity was because people saw him like Homer saw that little guy in the Yakuza. When the Yakuza showed up in front of his front door, and they're having a big, giant ninja battle, and there's a little guy in a suit, and Marge makes Homer come inside. And Homer goes, but Marge, the little guy hasn't done anything yet, and you know that when he does, it's going to be something awesome. And Marge makes him come inside anyway, and Homer shuts the door, and then you just hear, yeah! And Homer goes, oh. That little guy is Hook. He hasn't done anything yet, but when he does, it's going to be awesome. That, combined with Rocky, to me, is Hook. I think that coming off of this Samoa Joe match, the fact that Hook kicked out of Joe's finisher at 1, the fact that Hook kicked out of that bump off the table, the fact that Hook fought back as much as he did, flipped off Samoa Joe. You've got, Hook's not in world title contention anymore, right? For Hook to keep going after Samoa Joe would only confuse things that already have Adam Page and Swerve connected to him. But I think that what you need to do is have a new avenue for Hook to go down. And maybe that's Chris Jericho as a heel. Maybe that's Christian while Adam Copeland is doing the Cope Open. I don't know who it is. Maybe it's Wardlow. Whoever it is, it's got to be able to get beat by Hook eventually. But I think you have to get a great opponent lined up for Hook. And to me, Hook's whole thing is defense. It's the exact opposite of his dad. Taz, his character was, one of my favorite wrestlers in the history of AEW. He would just go in and F people up. He would just walk right in the ring on his path of rage, suplex them into oblivion, and pin them and beat them. Take 0 offense, take nothing, and win. And that's what Taz would do. I think Hook should be the opposite. I think Hook is a guy who just goes out there and takes punishment and keeps kicking out and keeps getting up. He's a smaller dude than most of the other guys. He's a younger dude than most of the other guys. Most of the other guys think that they can kick his ass, and they go in and they can kick his ass. But he just keeps getting up to the point where they got nothing left. And that's when Hook is able to overcome them by sheer willpower, and he can end up putting them in the red room. Hook, I feel like most Hook matches, unless it's against like a Dante Martin, unless it's against somebody like that, most Hook matches, I think, Hook should be doing very little except taking punishment, but just continuously coming back from it. It should be all about the comeback and the finish, and that's it. And I think if you do that going forward with Hook, you'll be onto something with that character. Speaking of being onto something, I'm really enjoying what we're seeing with Adam Copeland and the Cope Open. I know that people are polarized on this; they're separated. Some people think it's a waste of Copeland. Other people really like it. You can put me in the category of people that really like it, and I really like it. Sure, it's fun seeing the individual matches. You know, of course, you go, well, did we sign Adam Copeland so he can fight Griff Garrison? No, that's an oversimplification of what's going on. But the full body of work here is now you've got this group of matches where we've seen Adam Copeland versus Griff Garrison, Adam Copeland versus Lee Moriarty, amazing. Adam Copeland versus Dante Martin, amazing. Now we're going on to Dynamite, and we're seeing Adam Copeland versus Minoru Suzuki. And the fact that in 2024, we've got Adam Copeland versus Minoru Suzuki is exactly why AEW should exist. That match on paper is like, it just feels like AEW is starting to figure out again who they are and who they're supposed to be. So the question is, what's going to be the ultimate goal of the Cope Open? What's going to be the ultimate goal of Adam Copeland's Open Challenge? The promo on Collision was great when he explains that he's going through all of this so that he can get back to that TNT championship, so he can bring the TNT championship back to TNT. I think that these open challenges, there's no reason that he shouldn't be able to keep this going until Full Gear. There's no reason that Copeland shouldn't be able to keep this going until the next pay-per-view. And when he does, there's two ways you could go about it. Either announce that it's Copeland versus Christian at the next pay-per-view and get some interference going on, or what I would do is, at the next pay-per-view, he goes, I've got one more open challenge. One more open challenge, and they make it clear. Adam Copeland, if he can win his next open challenge, he gets a shot at the TNT championship. And I actually think that's better because I think the TNT championship should be defended on TNT. So the idea is, if Adam Copeland can win his last open challenge, then next week on Collision, he gets the match against Christian. And the final open challenge happens at the next pay-per-view. And he gets to the ring and he says, who is it? Who is the final challenger? And the last person that he's got to beat before he gets Christian is another ghost from his past. This is the moment where AEW signs Matt Cardona. Matt Cardona comes out as the final challenger in Adam Copeland's open challenge, and he beats Adam Copeland at the pay-per-view. Matt Cardona is the one that stops Adam Copeland from getting the TNT title back from Christian. And coming off of that pay-per-view, we start an epic feud, an epic story between Matt Cardona, the former Edgehead, the person who could never get over in WWE because they only ever saw him as Edge's assistant, as the guy who painted Edge's tattoos on his arm. And when Edge has gone and done interviews and talked about that period of time, he laughs at the fact that Cardona painted his tattoos on his arm. Well, now he's back in front of the national spotlight, and he's better than Edge ever was. Because unlike Edge, Matt Cardona had to go out and make a name for himself. See, Adam Copeland has only ever been under contract and gotten paid by a billionaire. Adam Copeland has only ever gotten to perform in front of a national audience. Matt Cardona had to carry Adam Copeland's bags. And then while Adam Copeland got to have the return run of a lifetime, Matt Cardona got fired from his dream job. And when Matt Cardona got fired from his dream job, he was left to his own devices. And when left to his own devices, Matt Cardona became the unstoppable machine that you see in front of you. Can you imagine if AEW is able to sign Matt Cardona, do everything with him that fans say WWE should have done with him, and create the Edge versus Edge head, Matt Cardona versus Adam Copeland story that we never got? It's a no-brainer to me. It's everything I want to see. We'll see if it happens. This week in Everything Counts. Quick this week in Everything Counts before we get to emails. This is how you know everything counts. Number one, Pete Dunne's back. And the Bruiserweight's back, and the vest is back, and all the credibility that he built as Pete Dunne returns in a tidal wave. And I love to see it. But also in Everything Counts, when we say everything counts, it doesn't just mean everything historically counts. It also means that everything going on counts. There was a time when being the top merch seller was something that meant something, you know, in the dirt sheets, on Twitter, wherever. But being the top merch seller didn't have anything to do with the story that's being told on television. Those days are gone because everything counts. R-Truth becoming the top merch seller became a storyline on Monday Night Raw. R-Truth giving royalties to the Judgment Day, and that's how he stayed in the Judgment Day, can only happen if R-Truth is the top merch seller. And why did that become a story on television? Because everything counts. Speaking of merch, by the way, you can get the Notsam Wrestling merch, that blue logo that you see in front of you if you're watching the show on YouTube right now. You can get the Notsam Wrestling navy blue t-shirt that says Speculate Wildly on the back, or the amazing, it's one of my favorite pieces of merch we've ever done, Notsam Zip Hoodie. We have it available right now, notsamshirts.com. You can also go to notsam.com. There's links on the top of the page to get tickets to the show in Tampa this coming Friday, January 26th, or to get your merch. The merch will only be up for another week, so get it right now or you won't have a chance to get it again. It goes back in the vault. But yeah, I'm very proud of the merch that we put out here. I worked very hard to make sure that it is the top quality merch of anybody even comparable to yours truly. And let's be honest, there aren't that many people comparable to the last professional broadcaster, but you won't find better merch in the podcast sphere than ours. The quality is high, the margins are razor thin. So grab it, scoop it up, enjoy it now. I pride myself on making merch that you actually want to wear. NotSamShirts.com. Let's go to the emails. NotSamWrestling@gmail.com. It's NotSamWrestling@gmail.com. Now, a lot of these emails are going to be wild speculation about Seth. I'm not going to really get into that because by the time this podcast comes out, we're going to be pretty close to finding out what's going on with Seth, I believe. So I'm going to leave that alone until we can actually talk about it. Will writes in, I started listening after WrestleMania 39. I love that. The podcast I used to listen to got very negative on its take of Cody losing to Roman, but you managed to keep it positive. I appreciated that. You made a loyal listener. Hey, man, why are we here? We love wrestling. Let's have fun talking about it, you know? My idea is this, and I'd like to get your take. If Seth is out for Mania, which I know remains to be seen, we could speculate wildly, though. That is rule number 2. What if the Rumble becomes a winner wins the World Heavyweight Championship and Elimination Chamber becomes the event to name the WrestleMania contender? I think that that's fair. I think this idea freshens up the Rumble match. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to talk, again, more about this. I think that yeah, I mean, there's a lot that can go on, right? I think that putting the world title on the line at the Royal Rumble would be a lot of fun. I think putting the world title on the line at the Elimination Chamber would be a lot of fun. One idea that I had was my idea right now is put the world title on the line at the Royal Rumble and then take the final 6 that were eliminated and put them in the Elimination Chamber. So that when you look, the final 7 in the Rumble match, 1 is the winner, he becomes the World Heavyweight Champion, and the 6 below him enter into the Elimination Chamber. And that's how you determine who gets a shot at WrestleMania. That could get us to Cody winning the title at the Royal Rumble, which makes it so we're not worried about him finishing the story. We don't claim that he's finished the story, but he's not going to poo-poo winning the World Heavyweight title at the Royal Rumble. Then we can have CM Punk win the Elimination Chamber match. And then it's Punk versus Cody with Punk challenging Cody at WrestleMania. We could also have Punk win the world title in the Royal Rumble. He goes and defends the world title against Drew McIntyre at the Elimination Chamber, who was eliminated 8th, so he just got squeaked out of the WrestleMania main event. And then Cody wins the Chamber, Punk beats Drew, Cody's got to beat Punk at WrestleMania. I mean, there's a million different scenarios. Austin writes in, lately I've been watching a lot of wrestling. I should hope so. Watch the product. Every week I've watched Raw, NXT, Dynamite, SmackDown, Rampage, and Collision. That's awesome. My wife has told me I've been watching too much wrestling and I need to lay off a little. I doubt it. Sam, I love wrestling, but I love my wife more. That's shocking. If I watch only 3 wrestling shows a week, whoa, which would you recommend? Oh. I mean, see, it's tough because I feel like you have to do 4. I feel like you have to watch Raw and SmackDown. If you're going to do 3, you have to either pick you have to watch Raw and SmackDown, and then either Dynamite or NXT. And what it boils down to is, what are you more likely to watch? An NXT Premium Live event or an AEW pay-per-view? Because you should watch the TV leading up to it. For me, I'll be honest, when my wife has had enough, I wait till she's asleep. I watch it on DVR. I got to watch everything. But I will try to do Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Dynamite, then do highlights of Collision, clips of Rampage. That's probably what I would do. Scan through Collision on my DVR. Like, watch the main event, watch the Copeland segment, you know what I mean? Like, watch that stuff. Yeah. But it depends. I mean, Dynamite and NXT is a toss-up every week in terms of, they're both great shows, so, you know. And I think every show's getting better. I think NXT keeps getting better, and I think Dynamite is starting to get to a place where it's getting better again, which you don't want to miss out on. Kanjay writes in, all right, Sam, I'm 100% positive you'll love this. Ooh, okay. That's very confident of you. You'll love this 4-way booking of mine. Okay. And if I'm wrong, roast the hell out of me. I have no problem doing that. So towards the end of the match, this is the 4-way at the Rumble. The Bloodline try to interfere as usual, but Roman stops them and tells them he'll win by himself. Okay, this sounds already like the booking that I did in the Predicting 2024 podcast the first week of the year, but Solo is visibly upset. This is literally what I said 3 weeks ago, by the Tribal Chief's choice. And as they are leaving, Roman gets caught by an RKO, but the pin is broken up by Styles' 450 splash. So about 4 minutes later, I love that you're down to the minute, when the match is ending, LA Knight, is hitting AJ with his main combo, the boots in the corner, right. Then the slam, but when he's about to hit the elbow on Styles, LA bounces off the ropes, then spear from Roman, then Randy tries another RKO on Roman, gets pushed off, tries to hit a clothesline. You're really getting into the physicality here. Like, are you a producer? Are you fantasy producing or fantasy booking? Because those are two different things. Spear to the Viper. Then AJ tries to surprise Roman, the phenomenal forearm, but nope, just like Extreme Rules 2016, gets caught with a spear by Roman. Then he stacks the three of them, 1, 2, 3. Boom, the head of the look, I mean, this isn't this is my booking, except you just added the moves that would get us there. This is all, I mean, the reason that you think I'm going to love it is because it's stuff that I've already said should happen. I mean, yeah. Roman should stack them without interference. That's the booking. And Roman turns down Solo's interference and Solo is visibly upset is literally something that I said in the Predicting 2024 podcast, the first podcast of the year. So, yes, I like your ideas because they're my ideas. But I appreciate you. You know, that's a tactic that people use sometimes. They try to impress somebody or get somebody on their side by regurgitating their ideas back to them so that they're in agreement. But I did that already. I see what you're doing here. All right, this is from Coop. Coop from SoCal. Long overdue, so I'll be quick. I booked 2 front row seats to Notsam Mania in LA the week of WrestleMania 39. Okay. It was so refreshing getting to know the greats, getting to know the guests and you live. I became bigger fans of the superstars after the sit-down interviews and interactions with the audience. I highly recommend to anyone even considering this experience, get your tickets ASAP when Sam comes to your city. Get the Tampa tickets. Tampa's going to be a wild one. Tampa's going to be so fun. NotSamLive.com for those tickets or the link at the top of NotSam.com. The entire show and the event was nothing short of a 5-star match. What a great way to kick off Mania week. You really did deserve that 10 pounds of gold presented to you. Was even kind and awesome that you took photos with us after the show, too. Awesome. Been down with you since 2015. You have a personal chef whenever you come to SoCal. Thank you very much, buddy. I appreciate that. Just an email to say thank you. It's always welcomed. Cade writes in, this is speculation. I hope it's wild speculation. Can you tell me if this sounds good to you? Of course I can. I'd be happy to. In the Royal Rumble, Roman Reigns stacks up LA Knight, AJ Styles, and Randy Orton to pin them all at once to win. Yes, that sounds good to me. CM Punk wins the Royal Rumble by sending Cody Rhodes over the top rope. Yes, that sounds good to me. At Elimination Chamber, desperate for a match at the Royal Rumble, I'm assuming you mean WrestleMania, Cody enters a fatal 4-way with Kevin Owens, Trick Williams, and Bobby Lashley for who would face Logan Paul at WrestleMania for the U.S. title. I don't know about that. Cody wins by pinning Bobby and gets to face Logan Paul at WrestleMania. The Rock also appears to challenge Roman Reigns. At WrestleMania, Cody wins the U.S. title and Roman beats The Rock and Seth beats Punk. The following Raw, Punk wants a rematch. Seth says that he has to beat someone of his choosing, which is Cody Rhodes in the main event of Raw. CM Punk wins. No. And the next night, in the next Raw, during the match, Damian Priest comes out to cash it. No. Cash in, but R-Truth stops him, saying not now. And because of that, Punk wins, becoming the new World Heavyweight Champion. No, it sounds like a mess. I don't like it at all. No, I don't like that. I already told you. No. Liam writes in, Sam, out of my friend group, I'm the only one who's a diehard wrestling fan. I have one question. What would you recommend me to do to make my friends like wrestling? Now's the perfect time, bro. If you've got friends and you want your friend group to get like into wrestling, you gotta have them watch Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble is the easiest time in the world to get your friends into wrestling. And I guarantee if it's a good Royal Rumble, you'll have them on the hook until WrestleMania. And then, it's a crapshoot. But get your friends over your house for Royal Rumble. Bet on the match, and here's how you do it. Everybody puts whatever. Everybody puts money in, $5, $10, $20, whatever you want to do. If you've got 10 friends over, they each get 3 names. If you got 3 friends over, they each get 10, not names, numbers. They each get 10 numbers, whatever it is. Everybody gets numbers. Then you draw them out of a hat, So if you've got, 10 friends over, you get 3 numbers drawn out of a hat. 2, 10, and 13 are the numbers that I get. Whoever gets the number that the person who wins came in at wins the money. Now everybody's gambling on it. Everybody's invested, so they're paying attention, and people get to pick their favorites. They get to follow them to WrestleMania. It's perfect. It's perfect. Everybody wins. That's what I would do if I were you. This one comes in from Mark. Hey, Sam, the Haps is you rule. Oh, thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate that. What's your name, Mark? I saw you and the little guy at MSG holiday event. Oh, that's fun. And out of respect for you and the family and family time, didn't want to intrude. Oh, thank you, buddy. For the record, you're the ultimate pops. This is a great email. Whatever you say, I agree with it. I've been discussing a theory with friends and want your take on Cody Rhodes. It goes without saying that Stone Cold Steve Austin was the first, or at least the most memorable, anti-hero of our generation. In contrast, an anti-villain or anti-heel is a character who has heroic personality traits but is ultimately the bad guy in this story. Everything about Cody, from branding of his name, American Nightmare, and American flag skull logo, the Kingdom theme music, the proclamation of there not only being one royal family in wrestling, to the dashing suits, bleach blonde hair, tour bus and charter jet tweets, to me, present on the surface as a heel, coupled with Cody's loving, caring, and genuine ultra babyface mannerisms and traits, alongside the presentation, to me, screams anti-heel. Everything about this American Nightmare presentation, with the exception of how he carries himself, makes him an anti-heel. Part of finishing the story, I passionately feel, is Cody ultimately fulfilling the obvious that has been in front of us all along, and perhaps eventually what will be a very compelling heel Cody storyline. I love that thought. And I agree with you that eventually Cody has to turn heel, and that the eventuality of Cody's story does have him as a villain, and that maybe wanting to finish the story so badly drives him to the point that he's a villain. But it's interesting that the foundation of that is already here. That everything that makes him a heel is already in front of us. And one day we'll stop cheering it, and he'll resent us for that. Yeah, I think it's possible. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I like it. I think it's fun. I like that. I like that observation. Let's see. Mark is a different Mark. What's your name? Mark? Hey, Sam. It's the same email. Oh, I guess you sent it to 2 different. You sent it twice. This is Nicholas now. Hi, boss. So the last few weeks, I made you read the rules in French. You did well for a first-timer. Thank you very much. Congratulations. But now I understand why my language can be such a pain in the ass to learn. Now on to the wild speculation of the week. Big E returns at the Rumble to begin a story with the Judgment Day leading to the New Day versus the Judgment Day at Mania for the title. For which title? For Tag Team Championship? I'm down with that. I'm down with Big E returning. Man, that would be wild, huh? I mean, I don't know. It's hard to fantasy book Big E because you just don't know. He's like the new Randy Orton, but it'd be really fun if that happened. I'd be all for it, and it would be a great space for the Judgment Day to be in, that's for sure. Because isn't it interesting that, like, the Judgment Day have been the top heels on Raw for months, and going into WrestleMania, all the planning for the top matches have nothing to do with the Judgment Day. I mean, we got Brock Lesnar probably coming back for the Royal Rumble. We're not even talking about it. It's wild. Rico writes in, just wanted to ask about Rollins. I personally feel terrible for his injury if he's forced to vacate again. If he does, I personally believe that the redemption arc, after being robbed of 2 WrestleMania main events by injury, should have him in serious contention to be the one to win the Royal Rumble next year. I don't know. I mean, that's very wild speculation. We'll probably be able to talk about that more after we hear from Rollins on Monday Night Raw. Jacob writes in, big fan of the show. Just wanted to throw out the idea. This will be the last email, by the way. Just wanted to throw out the idea of Drew McIntyre beating Damian Priest for the Money in the Bank briefcase. It will not be the last email. I'll do one more after this. Sorry. I think McIntyre should be a bigger priority. And with Punk's return, I don't see where Priest fits into the title picture moving forward, as it just feels like he's a level below Punk, Rollins, McIntyre, Cody. This is all under the assumption that Rollins doesn't have to vacate the title. But even if he does, I feel like a Priest reign will devalue the title. He's solid, but doesn't belong in current main event scene. His feud possibilities below Balor are just not intriguing. I mean, listen, I think that absolutely Damian Priest, I think you're selling him very short here. I think switching the briefcase off him would be a huge mistake. I don't think Drew McIntyre needs the briefcase at all. I think that we could easily see Damian Priest cash that briefcase in the night after WrestleMania. I think that CM Punk could leave WrestleMania with the World Heavyweight title regardless of the outcome with Seth Rollins. And I believe that Priest could cash in on Punk, beating Punk for that title. I believe that a Backlash main event of CM Punk versus Damian Priest would be great. And I believe that even if Damian Priest only holds the title to Backlash, I think that that would be fine. And I think that Drew McIntyre versus either Priest or Punk coming off of Backlash for the title would be great. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with I'm against it. I think switching the briefcase would be a huge, it would do real damage to Damian Priest, real damage. All right, this will be the last email. This is from my man Raj in Queens. If Rollins is injured, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do one more email again. I can't do another Rollins thing. But this is still, I'm here for the wild speculation. If Rollins is injured in any way, he should drop the title and take some time to heal up and rest. Well, if Rollins has an injury that will be better in 6 weeks, then there's no reason for him to miss WrestleMania if he doesn't have to miss WrestleMania. Like, he shouldn't just take extra time just because. Everyone knows he's been a workhorse and a fighting champion. The vacant title can be up for grabs at this year's Rumble. Punk can win the title, and the winner of the Elimination Chamber match can face Punk at Mania. Correct. Punk will retain the title at Mania. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe not if it's Cody. At some point in the story arc, Punk will have to turn heel, either before or after Mania. Not necessarily. Seth can make his return and fight for the title he never lost at SummerSlam or Survivor Series. Punk's story is to main event Mania. Seth versus Punk does not have to happen at Mania. True. Only if Seth is injured, though. If Seth's not injured, it should happen at Mania. All right, this is the last one. When do you think the men's tag team championship will have its design changed? This isn't the last one. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Okay, here's a long one. Who's this coming from? This will be the last one. This is from Chad. Sam, big fan of the show. Hate waiting a full week between episodes. I appreciate that, man. Here's my wild speculation. With heavy rumors of Seth with legitimate injuries, I'd love to see Damian Priest cash in and win the title on Raw. That's an interesting thought. While Seth is announcing that he's got to vacate the title before he can actually vacate, Damian Priest cashes in on him. That's interesting. Adam Pearce comes down and says Seth made the World Heavyweight title a fighter's championship. Congratulations, Damian, on your win. And let you know you'll be defending the World Heavyweight title at the Royal Rumble as the #1 entrant. That I hate. My original thought was to have Damian beat down. My original thought was to have Gunther beat down Seth on Raw after Mania, after losing his title a la Bane breaking Batman's back, and Damian cashing in on Punk. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but this, Roman goes on to face Rocket Knight 2. Winner of the Rumble faces the winner of the Chamber on night 1. That's overly complicated. Oh, no. No, that's fine. I thought you meant the title was still vacant. That's fine. As the first entrant, Damian has a strong and long, credible showing until he's eventually eliminated by Finn Balor. Damian goes ape at ringside, and this leads to a good blood feud at Mania. A returning Brock Lesnar eliminates Gunther, setting up their encounter. Fine with that. Punk eliminates Cody to win his first Rumble, guaranteeing his Mania main event. Cody wins the chamber where they already have background. The rest of the card is tough, but I'd love to see the following. Dominic versus R-Truth retirement match. That's crazy. Nobody's ready to retire there. IC ladder match, Gunther versus Sammy versus Drew versus Kofi. Why would you have Brock versus Gunther? You just said you're setting up Gunther versus Brock. Did you forget already? U.S. title triple, KO versus LA versus AJ Styles. Oh, you got KO beating Logan Paul already. Jay versus Jimmy, I'm with you. Finn versus Damian, I get how you got there. Oh, this is why. Logan Paul versus Randy Orton. And a Philadelphia ECW reunion segment after WrestleMania. It's a long email. I'd love to see Raw kick off the tournament for a new cruiserweight title. Okay, all right, enough of that. No, I think that you're much better off having the Royal Rumble be for a vacant title than having Damian Priest have to defend at the Rumble. That would make Damian look terrible. I don't like that at all. But I appreciate the email, and I appreciate all you guys emailing in. It's always good to hear from you. NotSamWrestling@gmail.com. Don't forget to go to notsam.com. Click the links in the top. One will get you to get tickets to the live show Friday before the Rumble. It is going to be absolutely epic. Make sure you are there live. Friday, January 26th, Tampa, SideSplitters Comedy Club, R-Truth, Samantha Irvin, DJ Who Kid, myself, and more guests yet to be announced who may or may not be a surprise, as well as the Not Sam Wrestling merch available now for a limited time, only available for the next week. Go to notsamshirts.com to get that, or click the link at the top of notsam.com. And we'll see you soon here and all over the place Royal Rumble weekend. Who knows what the world will look like post-Rumble next week on Not Sam Wrestling.